We live in a world today where our country has been waging a war on drugs and the people who use them for over 40 years, and it's only cost us money, freedom, and lives, and the drugs aren't going away. In fact, it's easier to get drugs now, more than ever, and it's actually harder to get alcohol than it is to get the illegal drugs when you're underage. And where does all the money go from these drugs? It goes to the cartels when it could be going to the US government if they were to regulate them or at least decriminalize them and stop throwing people in jail, and maybe ticketing people for having them is typically what they do for decriminalization. I'm going to show a video on the drug war off thehouseilivin.org. It pretty much sums up a lot, or all of the issues that it's caused.
The war against drugs is heating up.
As you can see, the numbers are growing.
America has spent more than $1 trillion on the war against drugs. 45 million. Mandatory sentences on those convicted. We are the jailingest country on the planet, beyond Saudi Arabia, China, Russia.
We've got more jails, more police, longer sentences served. Total war against public sentence number one.
Drugs are cheaper and more plentiful than ever before.
I don't think the term bomb can be kept.
Too many people in jail don't need to be there. There's a lot that's struggling.
We fought a war because it's successful.
I believe it was in the interest of America.
Okay. Marijuana is the most used illicit drug in America, and steadily over the past 50 years, according to a Pew's research poll, it has gained more and more approval to the point that over 50% of people think it should be legal in the United States. And in a country where we're founded on democracy, we're not being very democratic with our drug policy. For other drugs that aren't marijuana, most people don't think they should be legal, but rather than locking people up for nonviolent crimes, we should offer them some kind of help for their problem, if they have a problem. And Colorado this year recently legalized marijuana. It was one of the first two states and has gained $3.5 million in tax revenue in just the month of January, the first month it was legal according to Forbes.com. And when marijuana isn't legal, where does all the money go? Mostly to a man named El Chapo, who is pretty much the Al Capone of modern day, and rather than alcohol, it's narcotics. And we saw with the prohibition of alcohol that it didn't work, and that's why it got changed, because the politicians liked their alcohol and they noticed prohibition wasn't working. And that's different with marijuana and other drugs. It's typically less common, and a lot of people find the stigma to be that racial minorities only try these drugs, and it's morally wrong. But some facts about how much money that El Chapo makes. He earns at least $3 billion a year from the cross-border drug trade, and causes the death of about 60,000 people every year. Maybe not, actually not every year, scratch that. And that's according to an article on The Week. And you see, this is much more violent and worse for our economy because it feeds violent gang members and drug cartels that kill people rather than giving our government money to help our economy, which is already like really in debt. And also, I'd just like to point out that marijuana and heroin trafficking have been around for over a century from Mexico, and it got way bigger in the 80s because they received way more funds from Colombian cocaine at that time, and so that just shows that they're growing. It's not like we're doing anything against them. They're getting bigger, and it's not good. Uruguay, a South American country, the president stated that Uruguay recovers $5 million worth in drugs each year, and while spends $80 million fighting the traffickers who transport those drugs. And you can see that, I mean, the government doesn't make any money off of those drugs because it doesn't sell them. It just recovers about that much money, and you can see just the radical difference between how much they spend and how much they're really fighting off. And so he just came out and said that that Uruguay is going to legalize marijuana and make the price so low that there's no way that drug traffickers could outprice them. And so people are going to buy it from the government, and soon there will be way much less of a reason for any drug cartel to go into Uruguay. And this is according to an article on The Week. And right after Uruguay came out and said this and broke the taboo of legalizing marijuana, Colombia and several other countries came out and started to support it. Colombia even said it would support regional, like the entire region, legalizing it. The other point is that today, or things like DARE and the government taught us that the legal drugs, what you get from your doctor and what you can buy when you're older, are way better than the illegal ones. But according to drugwarfacts.org, I actually have a chart that shows the causes of death, but basically legal drugs, in just the prescription ones, I'm not talking about tobacco or alcohol, killed more people in 2010 than all of illegal drugs combined. And that's not all. The legal ones like tobacco kills 440,000 people a year globally, and alcohol killed 88,000 in 2010, and all illegal drugs only killed 17,000 people. And of the prescription drug deaths, which were 22,134, it turns out that about 75% of them were unintentional, which means that they accidentally overdosed, which simply means like they didn't mean to, like their doctor gave them too much and it really like messed them up, or they simply got too messed up and accidentally took more than they should. And these drugs are just as bad for you, if not more bad for you, than legal drugs, or than illegal drugs. And the fact about, they've actually found that illegal drugs can have medical benefits as well that we aren't studying yet because of their illegality. And in an article on CNN, a child who had been having seizures for 5 years, ever since she was born, and was on like 7 different medications at one time, all benzos and things that are really bad for your body, tried medical marijuana because it became legal in Colorado, and it stopped, or it really slowed her seizures to a halt. Like she might have one a month, whereas all the other drugs just weren't working, and she had many seizures like a day. And for cancer patients, marijuana has been found, according to the National Cancer Institute, that cancer patients with chemo can use marijuana to relieve their pain, their nausea, and it also gives them their appetite back, which chemo takes away, and which has much more of a detrimental effect than just like the chemo, because you can't eat, and that's really bad for your body when you have cancer. And according to BBC, the University of South Carolina is now testing MDMA on people with PTSD, because back before all these drugs were illegal and no one really knew about them, scientists and doctors were doing experiments with them, and they found that it could help, and now they're bringing it back because there's more of a change in our social opinion about these drugs. And the counter arguments for the legalization / decriminalization of drugs, it's pretty much that they threaten the productivity and the safety of society. Like, we don't want all of our people on drugs, nothing would get done. But the fact is that the drugs don't go away when they're illegal. It just makes them more dangerous to get, and we're not giving people who we want to have our money. We're giving our money to people who like are violent and are hurting people for that money. And in conclusion, now that you know the truth, I dare you to try new drug policy.